We are 22West Radio. 22West Radio is 22westmedia.com and 88.1 FM KKJZ HD3 Long Beach, Los Angeles.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and now a World Broadcasting Tag Team Champions of the World and a Cruiserweight Champion.
I'm Ethan.
I'm James.
I'm Rob.
And this is Beyond the Ropes. We are BTR Pro Wrestling Talk. This is episode 114, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So 114. We are in the midst of our quarantine era. I don't know how much longer we're going to be here, but
I think we're on the other end.
That's what we think right now, but we'll see in a couple weeks what goes on.
Very true.
Yeah, this is, like I said, the quarantine era of BTR, but we've got another era that's going to be celebrating a milestone this Sunday. That's right, I'm talking about the Undisputed Era, because this Sunday, it's the 365th day of Adam Cole's NXT Championship run. He will have had the title for a year. There's going to be a Twitter celebration, so go follow WWE or WWE NXT. You know, I'm going to be there with the cake and be wearing all my Undisputed Era merchandise. And I know, James, you're so excited for this. You're grinning with joy.
No.
Rob is super excited too. Tell by his face right now. He's in the virtual 22West Radio studio. But in addition to following WWE on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at EthanMD95. You can follow James on Twitter at
JHW Reporter.
And Rob at
Rob Flores Media.
As well as Facebook.com/Beyond the Ropes, where we post predictions, various episodes of the show, and so much more. We are also on YouTube. To search up Beyond the Ropes, and you'll find 113 episodes uploaded there. I know Rob got our last one up there right away, so let's keep it rolling. Let's do this. All right, I guess we can just get into Monday Night Raw. It's a fun little show. Nothing too crazy, but it was.
He said a fun little show. It's 3 hours.
It's a little show because it takes place in the Performance Center, but there were fans this week. WWE Performance Center / NXT stars were a part of the audience this time, surrounding the barricade and plexiglass that surrounded the ring as well, which is a unique look. I really liked it, actually. I thought it added to the atmosphere. I think the fans were necessary for quite some time. I know AEW has been doing it with their wrestlers for the last couple of months now. But I like the way WWE did it, where they had some of the up-and-comers kind of watch the show and cheer on. I know there were a lot of complaints about them having to stand for several hours because they did not have chairs, but it adds something. You have people stand, you get them into the show. So
I think, it does work out. I think they did it right. It kind of come off as a punishment for them to be standing, but ideally their job is to make noise, be active. If they're sitting in chairs, you're only going to cheer for so long in a chair before you're standing up anyways. Mm-hmm. So I thought, if anything, they would have moved them around a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe have some of those people who are behind the camera maybe sitting down. You're not seeing them a whole lot. They could still make noise. Having those people who are near the entranceway there, while they're doing a lot of the standing, they're on that hard cam. Maybe switching them out, getting some of those other faces there, and having that same energy. But I think it worked out pretty well. I think, again, like you said, with the plexiglass, it kind of gave you that hockey arena kind of look. It didn't look horrible. It was interesting because you started seeing some faces pointed out on Twitter of like, so-and-so's in the crowd. Watch out for her in the next 2 or 3 years. She could be the next star in the women's division. And I'm like, oh, who's that? Let me follow her. And I found out I was already kind of following her and stuff. Then, I saw The Rock's daughter was there. which was funny because they showed her very quick when the show started. And I believe The Rock's new show, the Titan Games, I think was starting at the same time. So I wonder if that was a coincidence there. But then I told my family, because they were in the living room watching it with me. I'm like, oh, that's The Rock's daughter. And then they never really showed her again. So I thought they would have maybe had her a little front and center there, but they didn't. But I think, again, having some of the young talent like that there, watching the show, watching the way it's produced, giving them an understanding of what it is they're training and working towards, I think it really helps and can be beneficial for them to watch that. I can easily see 5-10 years from now, you see some of these younger people that we saw in the crowd when they have their big moments and they say, hey, I remember, or one of my biggest influences is Charlotte Flair, and watching her gracefully come down the aisleway, and that was one of those moments where I said, yeah, this is for me, or yeah, I hope that I have the chance to go one-on-one with her in the future. And then, you're fast forwarding 10 years later, and then that match is happening, or whatever the case may be. So, it's pretty cool. And I think as we get into the first match here, that moment that we have at the end of this match is, again, maybe what could have, should have, and would have been nice if they had for a Drew McIntyre when he wins the title. So I'll let you go.
So the show started off with the Kevin Owens show. Kevin Owens introduced Asuka. Nia Jax was there, as well as Charlotte and Natalya. Natalya, Charlotte, and Nia Jax were going to compete in a triple threat match that happened later on in the show, where the winner were to go on to face Asuka at Backlash in a couple of weeks. So that kind of happened. There was a bit of a brawl. And then, as you mentioned, we got into our first match, which was for the United States Championship between the challenger Apollo Crews taking on Andrade. This was a relatively short match, only 7 minutes, I believe. But we did end up getting a new United States champion. Apollo Crews picked up the victory, hitting a standing moonsault, and then a standing shooting star press, which I believe was like his original finisher when he first came up in the independent scene. So that was really cool. I know a lot of people were very happy about that. Kind of long overdue in a sense, because he's been with WWE for a few years now and kind of been in the lower card for quite some time. So seeing this kind of new opportunity, especially with everything going on, definitely take advantage of it. And he ended up winning the United States Championship finally. So congrats to Apollo Crews.
Yeah, I thought it did work out well, like I said, with the crowd being there, and props to WWE and everyone involved for not only having the crowd there, but then ignoring them and pretending they didn't exist. Kevin Owens acknowledged them right off the bat, calling them the future and whatnot. Speaking of the future, we're now heading towards what could be the start of a good run here for Apollo. It's like you said, it's good to see some of these guys where they're kind of floating on that lower card a little bit. And a lot of people are like, wow, maybe if they push that guy, he'd do really well. And that looks like it's going to be the case with Apollo. But I kind of have to wait and see how this plays out, because it could be over in 2 weeks. Again, African-American champion winning, always a good thing to me. And it went over well on Twitter, where, like you mentioned, with a lot of different people. I saw a lot of African-American people, not a lot, but I did see a few African-American people. I didn't go looking for it, but just on my timeline, like I normally would be, it was very obvious that there was a lot of happy African-Americans, but just a lot of people in general happy for Apollo. The first time I saw him do that standing moonsault or backflip, I knew the dude was a stud, and he was gonna be something. So took a while, but finally got him with the title. I believe his first title ever with WWE. He hadn't even held a tag title or anything like that. I don't know if he was, I guess, not 24/7 champion. I thought he might have been in that mix at some point, but really cool to see. We'll see where it goes, and interesting to see what happens next with Andrade and company.
Yeah, so Apollo tweeted this out. The grind never stops, and it won't stop now. Here's where the hard work really begins. Thanks to anyone who has supported me since day one. Let's make this the first of many. And you're right, Andrade was throwing a fit in the backstage area during Apollo celebration. So it's interesting to see where Andrade will go from here.
And it's also worth noting this happened on Memorial Day, I believe. So obviously having the U.S. champion defended and crowning a new champion, especially to start off the Memorial Day show or Memorial Day episode of Raw, was very fitting. I believe they've done something like that in the past. So wasn't it a total shocker, I think, when you kind of put all that together, but still a very good moment and something to really get, that crowd going early on and getting a title change. Again, talking about a moment that a lot of these younger stars have something to work towards. So I think it gives a good perspective in a lot of different ways having Apollo win this match.
Mm-hmm. Next up in the backstage area, Seth Rollins, my hero, my Lord and Savior, the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins, came out along with his disciples Murphy and the new disciple Austin Theory with some new almost Hollywood Hogan-esque gear with the lightning jacket and attire. They each kind of said a few things and how Seth Rollins kind of saved them. And Seth Rollins talked about Rey Mysterio, essentially how Rey Mysterio sacrificed himself for the greater good. And we found out later on Twitter that Rey Mysterio will be having a retirement ceremony this next Monday on Raw, hosted by the Monday Night Messiah himself, Seth Rollins. So,
really? I didn't hear that last edition. I knew there was supposed to be this retirement ceremony. I didn't know Seth was involved, but I think that only adds to the shenanigans that this retirement ceremony sounds like it's going to be, especially if Seth Rollins is involved. But I mean, is Ray really going to retire like that? I don't think so. But I do think it was kind of interesting when I saw the playback of that attack. I mean, you can't. That eye thing was kind of intense. And we'll see something like that again later on. But going back to Rey Mysterio and that mask, they pretty much showed his whole face at that point. I mean, I know what he looks like based on his time probably been 20 years now in WCW when he wrestled without the mask. Mm-hmm. Still kind of looks the same, and you kind of like piece together, what his face really kind of looks like. So it'd be kind of interesting for some of those who didn't know Rey Mysterio was unmasked, and what went through their mind is they pretty much kind of did see his whole face in a way. So.
Right. And so, they originally tweeted out about the retirement ceremony, and then a few minutes later, I believe they added an update saying Seth Rollins would be hosting that ceremony. So, by the way, that was already shot because I believe they shot a few episodes of Monday Night Raw and such. So, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Yes. The Iconics came out. They did apologize to each other, thankfully, although when they came down to the ring, they were kind of cutting each other off after last week's incident where Billie Kay did slap Peyton Royce after Peyton got them disqualified in that women's tag team title match. This time, they were interrupted by Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, who argued with the Iconics about their friendship. Ultimately, the Iconics, Peyton and Billie, did attack them and then posed with the women's tag team title belts. So you can assume this match will probably happen at Backlash in a couple of weeks.
I thought it was a good little promo there by Nikki Cross, especially, you don't get to hear her talk in the way the Iconics tried to shut her down there a little bit was pretty interesting, but good little promo. And I thought, it kind of added that element of like, letting Nikki Cross's character evolve, letting you kind of inside a little bit more about her and the way she had to fight her way through. And then again, like you said, her friendship with Alexa, which to me, I thought wasn't really going to work out. So it's maybe a little early for Backlash predictions, but I'm starting to think we are going to get an Iconics title win.
I hope so. I really hope so.
Don't be fooled by the miscommunication. They're a little rusty. They just got back. It's gonna take a little time. It happens to all the great teams now. Happens to all of them. So
absolutely. Going back to Seth Rollins real quick. He has a brand new Monday Night Messiah shirt. I sent it to James. So James, put that on the list. Get it for me. Thank you very much. Rob, you want to go to the commercial break right now? All right, so we're going to do that. When we return, we will continue this discussion of Monday Night Raw, as well as NXT and a re-signing superstar. All that and more right here on Beyond the Ropes. We are 22West Radio. 22West Radio is 22westmedia.com and 88.1 FM KKJZ HD3 Long Beach, Los Angeles. I'm your host, Ethan, joined alongside the analyst, James, as well as our producer, Rob. This is Beyond the Ropes, Real BTR Radio on Twitter, Facebook.com/Beyond the Ropes on Facebook, and just search up Beyond the Ropes on YouTube, where you can find additional content and all of our episodes uploaded there. We were discussing Monday Night Raw. MVP hosted his VIP lounge with special guest, the WWE Champion, Drew McIntyre. MVP said that when he offered to manage McIntyre ultimately claymored him, and then that was kind of the decision for MVP, that he would be responsible for ending McIntyre's championship run. Ultimately, Lashley did end up coming out, and MVP got a claymore for his troubles, and they kind of scurried out of the arena. So they're really keeping McIntyre looking strong, and MVP did a really good job in this episode of Raw. He's really making himself a really good manager. So
yeah, I think so too, especially because when he did return, I thought maybe it was a one-time thing. They played off as a one-time thing. I thought they were going to have him backstage. So it took a little bit, especially for MVP coming back, but to have him kind of finally settle in here with the role. And I thought maybe he was just going to be a manager, but then as we'll see later on tonight, he still carries his bag and his gear with him, as any and all wrestlers do. You always carry your stuff because you never know when you'll have to be called into the ring. And so good to see MVP getting in and being involved in multiple ways and showing he still has value in the roster and just within the company in several different ways.
Yeah. Moving on, we had a match between Angel Garza and Kevin Owens. Garza attacked Kevin Owens' leg before the match began and ultimately won with the wing clipper after Owens couldn't hit a pop-up powerbomb due to his knee injury. So Angel Garza is getting a nice little victory here. There's some buzz around him. I know there was a few tweets sent around that he was a part of the Monday Night Raw banner, that there was his picture with like Charlotte, I believe, Seth Rollins. So it's kind of like the top talents, and they were just they just added him, replacing Becky. Obviously, Becky's going to be in action for the foreseeable future. So it's a nice little rub there for Garza.
I mean, it's interesting, and it kind of makes you wonder where are they going with this. First of all, you're watching a Monday Night Raw, and you're not expecting to see a whole lot. You're not expecting an upset. I'm sure many people probably had Kevin Owens winning this. To see that kind of play out with an injury angle there, or with an injury more or less. And you see Angel Garza, and he was involved in something else as well. I believe they were trying to play up that promo he had during the Andrade match, and the way he compared was making love to a woman and being in the ring and having a match.
That's
and
right.
Some people were like kind of playing that into how it was supposed to have cost Andrade or something like that, even though it was backstage and Andrade can't hear what he was saying. But so I think there could be something with that, and him and Andrade. I mean, we already saw Austin Theory get knocked out of the group. Maybe they make a run for the tag team titles, or maybe they don't. Who knows what's going to happen with them? I'm kind of curious to where this ends, because 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, they were looking like a new, strong faction, and now it looks like we might start seeing tension between those two, and that could be a feud. It would most definitely be a feud if the U.S. title was still on Andrade. I don't know. Maybe they keep them together, but if they're going to try and have Angel Garza stand out the way that they are, then he might have to be separated from the pack as well. So who knows what happens with this stable going forward. But yeah, I wouldn't say they're officially putting the rocket on the back of Angel Garza, but they're getting it ready, if anything. So we'll see.
Yeah, and speaking, you mentioned the tag team titles. Next up, the tag team champions, the Street Profits, and the Viking Raiders continued their anything I can do, or anything you can do, I could do better, as they referenced it, kind of back and forth tournament. This time they were playing golf. However, after a series of unfortunate events, they kicked off the actual golf. What is it called?
Actual just golf course, like
course, yeah. And then they were sent to the mini golf course where they finished up their game. And I believe Ivar almost got into a fight with Little Crocodile. So at the end of it, it was a fun little segment. It's kind of in the comedy segment over the last few weeks. And ultimately, the Street Profits ended up winning this one. So they're up 2-1. And next week, they will be going bowling as chosen by the Viking Raiders. So that's going to happen.
I think this is fun. And I think especially, and they've done stuff like this before, but especially during this pandemic and everything, I mentioned it before and I brought it up, I believe before WrestleMania, but just when the pandemic happened, there was no fans and they had to start getting creative. This is definitely one of these times where they're getting creative just so they can continue to add a comedy spot, because again, it's kind of hard to create comedy spots when there's no crowd, there's no in-house reaction that you can kind of use to feed off of. So I think it's a nice touch, especially because it's a rivalry in a way, but it's not one where they, because they could very, very easily just start fighting on the golf course. And you kind of see it there when the crocodile or alligator gets involved, and even the Street Profit guys were holding back the Viking Raiders and saying we need to go to Raw. I don't know if they're all getting in one van and going together, but I thought it was kind of interesting that they mentioned hey, we need to go to Raw, and I'm kind of why would they mention that? Why do they have to go back to Raw? So even with that, I was kind of questionable as to why they even mentioned that. But we'll see later on that it was a meaningful line as to why, especially the Street Profits, had to go back to Raw.
Yeah. Next up, Lana and MVP argued about Lashley. This is, I don't know. Lana has been doing it the last couple of weeks. All she's been doing is screaming. So I don't know where they're going from there. Is she going to cost Lashley the title or something? I don't know. But moving on, Murphy and Austin Theory, the disciples of Seth Rollins, took on the team of Aleister Black and Humberto Carrillo. This wasn't a long match either. Theory ended up picking up the victory after hitting Carrillo with the ATL, which is also known as, I believe, the TKO. Ultimately, then Seth Rollins threatened to put Carrillo's eye out like he did Rey Mysterio. This is a really well done segment here. Black had a chair and he told him to stand down. Otherwise, he'd pretty much destroy Carrillo's eye. And so they kind of left the statement there. And then we got confirmation that next Monday night on Raw, it will be Seth Rollins taking on Aleister Black.
Yeah, I think, again, you go back to what was said about Angel Garza. The same thing had kind of been said about Austin Theory, about are we starting to see these guys, are these guys standing out that well that they felt it was necessary to break up the Vega group there to do something more with these guys? I don't know, but to give Austin Theory a win, Aleister Black is someone who has a rocket on his back and a guy who's not someone that's getting pinned and beat very easily. So to see him kind of, in a tag team situation, but see Aleister Black take a loss, it was, it has to be a meaningful loss, or else they wouldn't be doing it. So I think this adds to your Messiah group, and it furthers your belief in the way of Rollins. So take it for what it is, I guess.
That's right. Next up, we had a fantastic Edge promo discussing his match at Backlash against Randy Orton, which is considered to be the greatest wrestling match ever. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. This is a fantastic promo. Edge talked about how he's been out of action for 9 years, and Orton has had over 1,000 matches since then. Talked about, he used to be the workhorse and the guy that you could put good matches with. You could trust him to carry people to that length of match. And he's like, doubting himself. That was back then. He doesn't know if he could do it now. But it was fantastic, and Edge has been doing some of his best work since he's come back.
And I think it's I think some things that stood out to me in that promo was, one, the amount of statistics that they had and the way they presented it with how many matches Orton has had since Edge has been out, as you mentioned. I think Edge mentioned how many days he had been out. Not, aside from how many years, but like how many days it was. He mentioned. Yeah, it was like close to 3,000 because I had it down to where it was like every 3 days Orton had a match or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was obviously they got a little plug in there for the Undertaker documentary, but then also playing off of Edge watches the documentary, saying that he's had a lot of those same feelings in a way about wanting to be in the ring. When you have the bug of being a wrestler and being in that ring, it's hard to let it go. And he looked into the camera and says, "I feel you on that, dead man," something along those lines, which kind of made it very relatable and kind of helps build the story, because if you're watching that Undertaker documentary and know what he's going through, you're now kind of applying that to Edge, which only adds to his storyline with Randy Orton. And of course, those two have history that go back for years. And again, also, I found it interesting, and I would have to think maybe it was kind of on purpose, I think, or I don't know, or how else it fit in. But Edge mentioned, you mentioned he had a lot of good matches, or that he was one of those guys, much like an X-Pac, who can be in there and get anybody over and do what needed to be done. And he mentioned a lot of great guys he's wrestled with throughout his career, and really kind of puts into perspective how long Edge has been around. He mentions guys like Eddie Guerrero and Owen Hart. This is a week removed from the documentary, one that WWE is not a part of, and it's been made very clear by Owen Hart's family. They want nothing to do with WWE. This is not the first time in the last 5 years or so that that Owen Hart has been mentioned in WWE. Obviously, I believe Mark Henry mentioned him during his Hall of Fame ceremony speech. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's coincidence. I think it is I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it was very apparent. I don't know by who. Maybe it was just Edge himself, being a fellow Canadian, showing some love for Owen Hart. But to get that name in there, I don't think was an accident.
Yeah. So before we move on, we still have a few minutes, right, Rob? Okay. So quickly, backstage, MVP confronted the Street Profits about being clowns, and they kind of made fun of him for getting kicked in the face by McIntyre. This set up a tag team match between the tag champions, the Street Profits, taking on MVP and Lashley for the main event. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The Raw Women's Championship and number one contenders triple threat match. Nia Jax took on Natalya and the NXT Women's Champion Charlotte in what was a phenomenal match. Charlotte and Natalya ended up putting Nia Jax through the table. Asuka was on commentary, and she's always great on commentary. Give her a live mic and she'll deliver. I know she was rooting for Natalya the entire time.
It was very, very obvious, which made me think she wasn't going to win. But
ultimately, Natalya ended up taking the loss after, I believe, a Samoan drop by Nia Jax. So Nia Jax will take on Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship. R-Truth and Rob Gronkowski cut promos on each other by video. So that was the first time Gronk, I believe, since Mania, cut a promo. Says he's ready to defend the title anytime. And then Ric Flair also cut a promo believing that Randy Orton will be defeating Edge in the greatest wrestling match ever.
But see, the thing I'm confused about this is because I saw that they were promoting a different match with, they had the Backlash logo on the side, but even that said for a whole different match, the greatest match ever. So that's that part of the Backlash title?
That's a slogan, I guess. Yeah, so we'll talk more about that and go into more details about Raw. We do have to take a break, correct, Rob? So when we return, we're gonna finish up Raw real quick. Give any last minute thoughts about that, and then we'll talk about a returning superstar who only spent about a week away. So all that and more right here on Beyond the Ropes.
Oh yeah.
All right, ready?
We are 22S Radio. 22S Radio is 22smedia.com and 88.1 FM, KKJZ HD3, Long Beach, Los Angeles. Welcome back to episode 114 of Beyond the Ropes. I'm your host, Ethan, joined alongside Mr. James Williams, the analyst, as well as Rob Flores, our producer. We're finishing up Monday Night Raw. Liv Morgan gave a promo about how she doesn't know who she is, which can she's pretty much playing a millennial, right? Or a Gen Z. I think she's like Gen Z, because millennials aren't. We kind of know who we are.
It's just confusing because didn't she, or was that Mandy Rose who came? Who was that? No, that was Liv Morgan who came back, and everyone thought was supposed to be like almost like a Sister Abigail kind of character with that dark gothic look thing, and that. So if she still doesn't know who she is after all that, then we don't either.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Raw in the main event, the Raw Tag Team Champions, the Street Profits took on MVP and Bobby Lashley. Again, another solid match. I will say Monday Night Raw had some great matches this week. They were fun. They weren't long matches, but they were very enjoyable. They took on, as I mentioned, Bobby Lashley and MVP. Ultimately, Lashley refused to release the full Nelson, which he's been using for several weeks now, and got his team disqualified. After the match, Lashley and McIntyre brawled, which led into the Performance Center trainees entering and serving as security guards, which is really a neat touch, I think. Mm-hmm. So that was cool. So that was Monday Night Raw. Your thoughts about the triple threat between the women or the tag match main event or anything that we really didn't go into detail?
So yeah, I thought it was a nice touch getting those Performance Center rookies involved early, getting them involved and kind of bringing it full circle for them being excited to be there, yada yada. And then you get them a little in-ring action there a little bit, getting them involved. I'm sure that's a segment we'll look back at later on and say, oh wow, look at all these other future champions of any sort who were involved in that segment. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world right now with protests and stuff. So I will just acknowledge that I thought this match, the main event match, was great because you had 4 African Americans involved. I seem to be bringing this up a lot, but it's kind of almost like when something happens with wrestling and African Americans, it's almost kind of worth mentioning because it doesn't happen a lot. I'm sure it's not the first time you had a full main event with 4 African Americans, but I thought it was a nice little touch.
It's very relevant to the situation.
Very relevant, and it stands out. And maybe in a way, the fact that it does kind of stand out is maybe an issue, or as to maybe how rare it is. But nice to see that that talent is being appreciated. Obviously, not just for them. I mean, when you look across the roster and who's getting pushed and whatnot, it's very diverse. But yeah, good to see. Good to see him continue to build the story of Drew McIntyre and Lashley. Going back to MVP for a second, I thought it was interesting. When we went down the card there, he was in like 4 different segments, and you talk about the value that he seems to have for the company. I mean, if you're in 4 segments, you're kind of topping Selena there, or Zelina Vega there, who was in 4 segments a few weeks ago. 4 segments of her own. So they're using and taking advantage of the talent that they have. Again, you're getting the Street Profits involved in another thing, like we mentioned, coming full circle for them. And that last line of we need to go back to Raw. Obviously, they didn't know they'd be in a match with Bobby Lashley and MVP, but it worked out and it was good.
And now, moving on to NXT, we're going to talk about the first ever fight pit that happened between Matt Riddle, Timothy Thatcher, with special guest referee Kurt Angle. So this match was kind of set up like a steel cage, but then it was surrounded by like a scaffold, which is very unique. This was a brutal match. It was not really a match, but an actual fight. They were really punching and kicking each other. Early on in the match, Riddle ended up kicking Thatcher right in the face, where he seemed to have lost 2 teeth. He had a bloody mouth and then teeth were on the mat, where Kurt Angle even picked him up in his hand. The match continued, or the fight continued. Riddle used the cage, using like a springboard kick almost. They were fighting on the scaffold a little bit. There was like an ankle lock by Thatcher to Riddle. And then Riddle ended up hitting the kind of corkscrew moonsault off the scaffold into the ring. Ultimately, it ended with Thatcher making Riddle pass out. So Timothy Thatcher wins the first ever fight pit in NXT. And Matt Riddle may end up be moving to Friday Night SmackDown. The rumor has it is that he is done with NXT, but it's a wait and see. So that was the first ever fight pit.
Yeah, they kind of moved on kind of quickly there. I mean, from the tag title run with Riddle, obviously, with the injury happening and them deciding to look like they're making a tag team with Thatcher and Riddle. But good on them for not ignoring the fact that, they come from a cage fighting background and having those two guys in the ring. Also getting Kurt Angle involved. I know you've kind of teased the return of somebody. I don't think it was Kurt Angle, but for all I knew, Kurt Angle was part of that furlough release list, and he appears to be back, at least for this past week. So good to see Kurt back. Who knows what his role will be? I'm assuming it'll be the same, a lot of, backstage, whatnot, producing and helping out with the talent. So good to see him back on TV. So, yeah, that was another standout just from this alone was the return of Kurt Angle.
Yeah, and also we got some Cruiserweight Championship Tournament news in the triple threat match. Jake Atlas took on Kushida and Drake Maverick. This was a great match. Ultimately, Maverick would end up sneaking up a pin while Kushida had the armbar on Atlas. He ended up pinning Jake Atlas to win the match and head to the finals of the Cruiserweight Championship Tournament. We did find out a little bit later in the night that Jake Atlas actually tapped out right before Maverick got the pin. It was off camera, but Kushida was kind of gave Maverick respect, and he shook his hand. He told him to win the title, and Maverick said when he wins, he would give Kushida the first opportunity. So we're going to get that match next week. So good for Maverick.
Yeah, well, I talked a lot about it last week, so I won't dive too much into it.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
I don't know.
Don't know where this is going.
We'll find out next week. We'll find out next week, I think.
Yeah, we will one way or another.
Yeah, so that's going to happen next week. Also this week, Adam Cole and William Regal had a negotiation via Zoom. We found out that it will be Adam Cole versus Velveteen Dream for the NXT Championship at NXT TakeOver in Your House. If Velveteen Dream loses, he cannot get another NXT Championship match as long as Adam Cole is champion.
Okay, so line this up for me here. So you mentioned earlier we're getting close on 365 days for Adam Cole, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what day does this land on?
This isn't this weekend, so this is probably 370 something.
So it doesn't land on the day of TakeOver?
No.
Okay.
He's going to be a year before. So Adam Cole's got it. He's going to retain.
And he's the longest reigning NXT champion?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just deciding on whether or not I think this is Velveteen's time to win it or not. I can see,
He's going to SmackDown.
I was going to say, so if he doesn't win and they're kind of having that stipulation of he's not going to get another title shot while Adam Cole has it, obviously you're not going to move all of Undisputed Era right now just because that's a big chunk of your roster leaving. So if you're having someone like Riddle also jump over to another brand, Velveteen could be another one, maybe some other guy. So yeah, it makes sense. Velveteen may finally get called up. I still don't know what's happened with the whole, Twitter stuff with Velveteen, but he continues to be on TV. So who knows?
Yeah, we don't know anything about that. We haven't heard anything about that. But anyways, before we wrap up the show, let's get in our discussion. Actually, quickly, Drew Gulak is officially re-signed with WWE. That was a big signing. His contract did come up over the last couple of weeks, but his profile was moved back to the official roster section, and he even promoted tonight's episode of SmackDown as we were recording this. So he is officially re-signed. Now let's get into this week's discussion question. Thanks to WWE on Fox for getting this. Yes.
I have a quick question. I just want to bring it up.
Go ahead.
So, in the time that in which Gulak's contract has happened, weren't they filming all these SmackDowns ahead of time? So, wouldn't that mean the time he was gone and the time he's back were they still taping all these? Was it a work?
I believe he was. So his contract ended when they were taping the last ones. So I think when they're taping this week's, he's already re-signed. So there's been maybe a couple weeks that he was probably a free agent, a week or two.
Okay. Carry on.
Moving on to the discussion question this week. WWE on Fox tweeted out, if you were in WWE, name a superstar you would have a match with, a tag team match with, who would be your partner, and someone you would betray. So let's go over to Rob. Rob, you have your choices? Who a match with?
Betray is also a tag team aside from the other tag team, though. But
okay.
I almost wanted names that they aren't yet in WWE, or I wish they were still, or something. Because what I have imagined is, well, for one, it's good to try to team up with someone that has a little bit of stroke, behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And of all Triple H's friends at the moment, like one of them that at least has had some kind of authority has been the Road Dogg. So I was thinking, since Road Dogg and R-Truth have had a history in both WWE and in TNA, that they would team up again and they'd form kind of a faction like Evolution, where it's, someone from the past, which is Road Dogg. The present would be represented by R-Truth, and the future would be someone that they would mentor. And that's how he debuted.
So, just to butt in here a little bit, are you going to have the dance moves and the rapping ability to keep up with?
No.
Are you gonna be? Well, you're not gonna be the promo guy. That's Roadie's thing, right?
It's like the roadie, like walking.
You could be the new roadie.
You're the manager, or what? You're just gonna be getting the ball.
It'll be the young roadie. That's all right.
Good for the fat kid in the audience, having some snacks, saying, we could be anybody to, and so just follow them around, learn the ropes behind the scenes with them, right? And then eventually the betrayal would have to be with them,
Wow.
Not bad.
I would betray them like when Cody Hall debuts to WWE.
Interesting.
Join Cody Hall and form a team with him. And it'll kind of be like the whole mentality of Jericho and Owens type thing, where Jericho's just looking out for his friend all the time. And I help him, I interfere in one of his matches so he becomes U.S. champion.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're managed by Heyman. And eventually, I think, the Rumble comes and we're mad that we're not in it. So we beat up Kane because Kane showed up as number 30.
Wow.
So Cody takes a spot and wins. And so, and that upset, obviously, Undertaker, too. So Cody has a...
You ruffling feathers on me.
Yeah. So the No Way Out pay-per-view comes back. Obviously, you remember how when it first came, there was oh, shoot, NWO is the initials. And so Cody has an Inferno match with Kane. My match, that I'd would be the Buried Alive with the Undertaker.
Oh no, not a Boneyard match?
So no. So right before my match is obviously the Inferno match. And I run and I throw a spray can to Cody, and he sprays Kane in the eyes so that he can burn Kane. Oh. So he wins. I get buried, though, so I can get repackaged later, and Cody moves on to be a big star.
Oh, you put the Undertaker over. There you go.
Well, you don't have a choice.
All right. So that's your plan right there, right? Okay. James, what do you have here?
I can't compete with that. Well, so for my singles match, I did have Eddie Guerrero as someone that I think would, because if he's, if you have a young guy in the ring and, I'm not going to know what I'm doing, having a guy like Eddie Guerrero will make anybody look amazing. So I know you can count on Eddie Guerrero for that. Someone else that came to mind was Jay Lethal. If you're talking about someone who's not in WWE, Jay Lethal would be pretty cool to have a match with. Someone I would tag with, obviously, someone who has tons of experience as a tag team wrestler. Ethan already knows where I'm going. And not only does he have tag team success, come back here, young man. Not only does he have tag team success, but he's also been amazing in singles competition. And while he did get screwed over once upon a time, Bret the Hitman Hart would be my tag team partner. And then the guy I would portray, I was thinking HBK at the time, just because of the whole thing with Bret. But it wouldn't go well for me. I know that for a fact, because not only when you get Triple H, you get HBK, but you get Triple H and everyone else involved. And I don't know if I want to be on the butt end of DX's shenanigans. So looking at a guy like Gilbert is someone I think I could maybe get an advantage over, and someone I could maybe get my first win over. Other than that, just going off of what Rob was saying, when I was 10 years old, I wrote down on a piece of paper when I thought at one time I was going to be a professional wrestler that I was going to go to WCW because I would want to avoid Kane and The Undertaker at all costs. So the fact that Rob wants to have a buried alive match with The Undertaker makes me believe Rob is nuts.
Yeah, well, some interesting stuff. You guys came up with some cool ideas. Unfortunately, we are out of time.
Hold on, young man.
What
is yours?
I didn't have
you can't.
No, I didn't come up. That's for you guys.
You can do it. Come on.
No.
I'm the host. I'm like, no.
You either come up with it now or you're leading on next week's show with it.
All right. I'll do something real quick.
You can do it quick. That's fine.
Okay, so I guess I would say a superstar I would have a match with, Adam Cole, baby.
Okay.
Of course I would want a team with him, but he's arguably the best wrestler right now. One of the best. Don't make that face. He's stellar matches. He probably beat me easily, but that's okay. He put on a good show. Someone I would tag with, again, it could be Undisputed Era for any one of those members. And if I'm gonna betray someone, I'm gonna betray. Let's see, someone who's currently on the roster. I want to betray someone who is not going to be much of a challenge. I'm going to go with, let's go with Otis in this one. Because, come on,
I wouldn't want to mess with Otis either.
He's harmless. Come on. So, yeah, I'm just going to go with him, or maybe I'll go with, the woman superstar. Come on.
That's not very fair, sir.
Well, yeah.
I mean, maybe for you, but it's not fair for you. I think
it's not fair for me.
I think you'd still lose.
You're right. They could all probably.
I stuck with the pick on someone your own size approach, and that's why I went with Gilbert.
I'll go with James Ellsworth then.
There you go. That's I was gonna say Taka Michinoku, but I think he could have got beat too. So
yeah. So although James did beat AJ Styles twice, so there's. All right, we're out of time. Until next time, you can follow us on Twitter at RealBTR Radio. But this episode has been too sweet.
You're late. All right, bye.